What up, YouTube? I am your host, Mediocre tutorials and reviews, back in here with one more video. All right, guys, you're looking at the thumbnail, you're looking at the title of the video. Y'all already know what time it is. It is time to get active. Now, what are we getting active on here today? Pearl, I like to affectionately refer to as Just Modern Woman Things, has been doing a tour around the content circuit, actually, as she has been doing over the past several months. I think that the biggest difference now is that the tour seems to be a lot more right wing, a lot more conservative. It seems like she's going for a much more political audience. She's actually rebranded on her channel from Just Pearly Things now to just Pearl, which is genius if you think about it. And I'll explain to you exactly why, and especially within this season of her content creation career, that it's actually important. Anyway, she got re-invited to the Piers Morgan Uncensored show right up on here on YouTube. Now, she did another podcast with him, I believe about 2 or 3 weeks ago. I was vacationing at that time and didn't have the appropriate tools to be able to talk about it at this time. But again, she's back up there right now. So I figured, why not? Let's just go in and see kind of what is happening. Now, before we dive right in and get started, I also wanted to point this out to you guys. Look at the title of this video, okay? It says, "I'm tired of women whining. The female Andrew Tate, Pearl Davis on equal pay in sports." What jumps out to you regarding that title? I'll tell you what immediately jumped out to me. The female Andrew Tate. Really? If I was Andrew Tate, I would think that that's a bit of an insult. Why? Well, when you compare the two in terms of notoriety, in terms of confidence in speaking, intelligence in points, leadership capabilities, name them. Man experiencing things within life that can talk to men, person that can give advice. The list goes on and on and on. She doesn't hold a candle to Andrew Tate. So my content creator hat comes on and I'm saying, well, maybe just Piers Morgan and his team just wants to get into the algorithm, which is more than likely the reason why they're putting female Andrew Tate in there. Or is there a much more interesting reason as to why that is happening? Because if you're not connected to Andrew Tate on any of these different things, then what really are you connected to be called the female Andrew Tate? And I think that the correct answer is that Andrew Tate is known for hate speech, whereas Pearl is now also known for hate speech as well. You see that connection? Andrew Tate caught some flack on the Piers Morgan show specific to women should be your property. Now, he's gone back and kind of massaged that statement and added a whole bunch of different sub-bullet points to what it is that he meant. Pearl has also said things like women shouldn't vote. So that's where the connection is. And again, I think that that's brilliant from a brand and an imaging perspective, because not only does it get her on equal playing field to those that know nothing about her to increase her brand representation, brand awareness, but also imaging as well to an audience of people that have not been introduced to her. But again, it continues to separate her previous brand within the male space as she continues on a warpath to create a new version for herself. I'm going to take a guess here. I'll talk to her in a while, but I'd imagine that she's moving from London. She'll be in the States, is going to create another podcast show, is probably going to invite new talent to be a part of her show and try to make it look like a Daily Wire, which actually might have some conflict because I think that her manager right now is a part of Daily Wire. Anyway, let's just get right into the content and see what's happening.
Well, joining me in the studio is socialist and author Grace Blakely and YouTube commentator Pearl Davis, both, I would imagine, identifying as provocateurs.
Of course.
Let's talk about this first of all. Pearl, I just find the whole personal pronoun thing honestly absurd. My personal pronouns on my Twitter biography are now hot, hotter, hottest. And frankly, if people don't call me those, then they have to be jailed. I go along with that. But I did that to highlight that when I do that and say that, people then accuse me of being ridiculous.
It's so ridiculous to me to call out being a provocateur in the same junction of calling out something as ridiculous as all of these damn different pronouns. That really gives you an idea of the state of the world today, if that is considered being a provocateur. Let's proceed.
I think the whole thing is ridiculous. Why do we need personal pronouns?
We don't need personal pronouns. I don't think it's kind to allow people to live in delusion.
Wait, are you
at
saying
the
we
end of
don't
the day,
need pronouns?
at the end of the day,
There are
at the end of the
No,
day,
personal
at the end of
pronouns
the day,
other than
we don't
the
look.
regular.
We
Pronouns are
know.
a
We all
pretty
know. We all
important
know
part of
what a
language.
man and a woman is. Okay, just because you dress like a woman, talk like a woman, act like a woman, it does not make you a woman.
True.
And I am so tired of us allowing these people to let us live in delusion. It is delusional to think you are the opposite gender, and it is not kind.
I
to
can't
enable
even
that.
go on. I love flying British Airways, right? My preferred airline, a wonderful airline. And there always used to be a lovely posh voice saying, "Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Britain." And I used to felt soothing, particularly if I came from another country back to Britain. I felt immediately at ease. My captain was there, sounding like he was, from some wonderful Pathy news bulletin, and he referred to us as ladies and gentlemen. That's now been banned. They're not allowed to say ladies and gentlemen
Crazy.
because there might be one person on the plane who says, "Oh, whoa, hang on. I don't identify as a lady or a gentleman." Well, okay, fine. I don't care. But I do.
Ridiculous.
So where's my right to
Right.
be called a gentleman?
Piers,
Grace?
you know how I feel about this. I'm so bored of it all. I'm so bored of the fact that this is the one item that's constantly coming up over and over and over again. And you can completely see why, right? Conservative governments have destroyed our economy. We're in the middle of a massive climate crisis, just after the hottest week ever. I've just come over from Europe. It's extremely hot. And instead of talking about that, we spend hours and hours and hours talking about pronouns, talking about going into bathrooms, talking about, all of this stuff that just doesn't matter.
Yeah, but you see, it doesn't.
What?
Hang on. But hang on.
Matter.
Doesn't matter to
I'm
you.
so
To you, yeah.
bored
It doesn't
of
matter to you,
Piers.
but it does matter to women in sport.
Yeah.
It does matter to
Sure.
women whose young daughters might be using these dressing
course,
rooms.
and
It does
let's-
matter to the victims of male
She's
rapists
ridiculous.
who see their attackers identify as women
And
to
let's
get into women's
have
prisons.
those
Sorry, so when you say
issues.
they don't matter, they really do
Let's
matter.
have those issues aired in the appropriate, spaces.
We are.
in sports. Have that discussion amongst sports people.
lucky-
But
Just real quick, I think Pearl is going to get ready to wipe the floor with her. How do you go onto a show about equal pay in sport and your position is that it doesn't matter more than climate change? We see stories day after day with people with this gender dysmorphia stuff headlining regarding things happening in prisons, things happening in just errant bathrooms, things happening to even like sorority houses and fraternity houses, even in the prison system. And gents, listen to me right now. If you're talking to a chick and within her Facebook or her IG profile, she got some she, her, them, whatever, these are my pronouns type shit, never take those chicks seriously. They're as steep down and just as in tune with the matrix that Andrew Tate continues to talk about. Let's go.
literally, it's about priorities, isn't it?
Lucky
There is a
for
certain
you.
number
I'm
of
a- I'm a- I'm
time
a female
that we have on
athlete.
these shows to discuss the issues that matter.
I
and
play
You don't think
volleyball.
women's... Hang on, before we come to our next...
I don't think women's sport matters as much as climate change.
Does women's-
I think
does women's
having a
equality
planet
matter?
in which we can play sport
Does-
matters more than the
does
rules of
women's
sport.
equality matter
I know
to
that
you?
that makes me probably absolutely
Does women's
insane.
equality matter to you?
Well, I mean, yeah, of course, but actually,
Okay.
I mean, the whole
Got her
point
there.
that I was going to make on this segment actually is that you cannot separate feminism from class issues. If you're just going around saying I don't know, I think the female CEO of a weapons manufacturer should be paid the same as a male CEO, and that's the hill I'm going to die on. I'm not fighting that fight with you because ultimately, what I care about are the struggles that ordinary women face every day.
Well, let's come to the main point of the segment, which
She
is
sucks.
this issue of women's rights to be paid the same as men in sport. Now, the Australian women's football team,
which is ridiculous,
have criticised the pay gap in the upcoming World Cup prize money. Let's take a look at what they said as a team.
736 footballers have the honour of representing their country on the world's biggest stage, this tournament.
Yet many are still denied the basic right to organise and collectively bargain.
Collective bargaining has allowed us to ensure we now get the same conditions as the Socceroos, with one exception. FIFA will still only offer women 1/4 as much prize money as men for the same achievement.
Well, okay, this is interesting, Pearl, because if you look at the revenue, for example, in 2019, FIFA generated £586 million in total revenue. The men's, for the 2019-22 cycle, 5.8 billion.
Piers spitting numbers like that should be enough to kill this conversation. But when you are debating people that don't like numbers and instead like their feelings, it can go on forever. You make more money for the organization. You as a contributor should get a higher percentage of that pay. Take gender out of it. Some corporate organizations make billions of dollars per year, and some organizations make hundreds of $1,000s per year. Are you telling me that those employees in the larger organizations should make the same amount of money as those in the smaller organizations?
Record revenue through the Men's World Cup. So the women's game has come on in leaps and bounds. The English Lionesses, fantastic win, sellout crowds. They're making a lot more money. They're definitely way, way further now towards where the men are commercially than they were, but they're still a way off. And when you saw at Wimbledon, for example, the men's final was watched by 3 times as many people, and yet they were both free to air on the BBC. You could watch both if you wanted to. So there was 3 times as much interest in the men's game. They played 2 sets more per match than the women do, and yet the women get equal pay. I'm not quite sure why. I don't think it's a matter of equality. It's just a matter of fairness, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I think all of the women should thank the men for funding our leagues, because most of our leagues would not exist
WNBA.
without the men, number one. Number two, when we have the
Subsidized.
same numbers, then we should get the same pay. I'm sorry, I play volleyball at the highest level, and it's like, when we make what the men make and get the crowds that the men draw, then we should get paid the same.
Also, why is it actually a fight for equality, Grace? I mean, why, if women in a particular sport, for example, turned out to generate more revenue, right, because they were more watchable, and in America, the women's football team is better than the men, and they do generate, even at school level, far more interest from girls than boys, for example.
It's because it's equality based off of gender, not equality based off of the outcome. That's why, which is how a rational capitalistic society should operate. Better outcomes for the organization, better outcomes for the individual participant of said organization.
I don't see why equality should be the aim. Why shouldn't they get paid more than the men?
Well, look, I mean, there are all sorts of problems with the way that this market for labour, and it is basically a market for labour, works. Like, I personally don't think that the top football players in the world should be paid as much as they do. I think it's ridiculous, the amount.
But that's market force.
Exactly. It's market forces.
Well, why shouldn't they get
that? Should that be the way that we decide, you know, who generates what? Personally, I'm very much in favour of the fact that they came out there and said collective bargaining. Ultimately, like, the average worker in this country hasn't had a pay rise in over a decade. How is that going to change? That's going to change when they organise with one another.
I am so tired of women whining.
Mate,
it's
the only
like
person whining
literally the men fund our leagues, and we will still whine that we don't get paid enough. And honestly, when athletes do shit like this, it makes all of us look bad, because instead of being thankful for the league that we have, we go out and whine and complain about the pay.
I mean, as I said, I'm not whining. You sound like you're maybe doing a bit of whining. But like, personally, I don't think we should be whining. I think people should be organising. If you want a pay increase, join a union, get out there and fight for it. That's my view.
What I will say, and I'm going to critique, not Pearl knowing her personally, but critique her entrance on this podcast. I think Pearl did a good job there succinctly summarizing that point. And also, too, she's doing a good job of listening and then responding after, as opposed to what we see talking over, making this a shouting match. And I also want to say, whoever's now styling Pearl, keep on putting her in neutral colors if you want her to be successful. Her skin type does not mesh well with those bold ass, fruity ass colors. Also, too, even though Pearl, I know you hate to put on makeup and do your hair, keep on letting them do that if you if you want to be respected in these right-wing political spaces. You ain't gonna get respect being frizzy every other goddamn live show. All right, let's go.
Should the women footballers get the same as the men?
Yeah, I think it probably makes sense.
Even if they're not making anything like the revenue?
Ultimately, like, it's not going to change. It's not going to change unless they organise. That's actually true across every sector in the economy. If you want a pay rise, join a union and fight for one.
Let me ask you this, though. They have got unions.
Exactly.
Let me ask you this. On talent alone, for example, as a yardstick, the US women's football team were beaten by a group of under-15 boys from Texas.
He took Pearl's point.
Who were very good, under-15 boys, but their under-15 boys team beat them, I think, about 8-9-0 or something. So why should women footballers, who are clearly nowhere near as good as their male counterparts, just technically, why should they get paid anything like as much money?
Well, I mean, you know, it sucks, doesn't it, that, like, as a woman, yeah, okay, you play volleyball. I'm a surfer. I absolutely love surfing. It's very hard for women to build up a body strength. This is something that I've learned very much the hard way.
Okay.
And so,
surfers, by the way, there is There is equal pay.
Yeah, there is. And actually, you know, it's
talk.
one of those sports where...
Can a
in
woman
my
be as
opinion,
good as a man or not?
well, it's different. It's a different sport, really. It's not, you know... It's
The answer is no.
It's very different watching a woman surf than it is watching a man surf because, you know, the average male body is different from the average woman, woman's body for all these...
But is there any
reasons.
actual technical reason why a woman can't do with a surfboard what a man can do?
Before she fumbles her way to answering that, this whole same pay shit is so interesting because women, modern women, are economically socialist, but romantically they're anything but. What is it that I mean by that? They want equal pay, not based off of results, but based off of gender. Yet when they look for a male suitor, they look for the top 10% of men. What happened to being fair and equal? Why don't you give everyone a cracking shot at the insides?
Yeah, there's loads of reasons. Like, it is about the upper body strength. It's about, like, the way that the body is built.
So should women surfers at the elite level get the same as men?
But, like, again, I think it just is different. Like, it's a different kind of game and people watch it.
Oh, you're shaking your head.
No, I just think when we start making the same amount of money as the men, then we should get paid the same as
Sure.
the men. I don't hear the men whining about OnlyFans models getting paid more than them. I don't hear the men whining
Is that
about
true?
models getting paid more than them. Kendall
Does-
Jenner is the highest paid supermodel. Where are the male supermodels?
averaged
but whenever
out-
men dominate in an industry, women will just complain.
I mean, I don't know if that's true about OnlyFans because there are a lot of men on OnlyFans as well. But I mean,
Oh my God, did she really just try to compare female OnlyFans models versus men? The arguments are so disingenuous, it's ridiculous.
look, the main point
You
here...
think they make the same?
I have no idea, but like maybe
Well,
if
then
you
why are
averaged
you-
out the number of men and women that are on that website. Anyway, look, the main point here, and the point that I came on it,
Oh my
I wanted
God.
to make,
Go on.
was that the problem that we have in our economy at the moment is not that like the average football player isn't paid the same as the average man. It is probably an injustice, and I'm glad that they're organising and working together to fight for that. But ultimately, the problem we have in our economy is that nobody's getting paid enough money because inflation's eroded people's wages. Even before that, no one had a pay rise in a really long time.
But-
And the
okay.
lesson from this
Nobody?
is, as I've said, I'm going to say it again because it's an important lesson and no one knows about them anymore because
went
they
up.
see them as a hangover from the 1970s. Join a union because otherwise your boss is going to
Yeah,
walk
but there
away
are
with you.
unions for all these. It's the unions that are fighting for them.
Exactly.
But okay, but just as a general point, though, the principle you think that women should get paid the same, even if they're not as technically as good and not producing as
Well,
much
it's a
revenue.
subjective judgment, isn't it, on whether or not they're like technically as
Well,
good?
not really.
It's not.
No.
It's not.
Because people watch men and
No,
women's
it's
sports
not.
for different
Well,
reasons.
let me give you an example. An example would be the Olympics. If you made it non-gender specific, how many women would win medals?
Well, I mean,
None.
okay.
I
If
mean,
you're-
maybe in
Zero.
equestrian and maybe in shooting, I think, are the
But
two.
again, I think-
where there's no sense
Maybe
that the
archery?
men might win.
you can say like, oh, you know, this group is better than this group. But again, I think it's different.
Men are
It's
better than
different.
women
We
at
watch-
sports. Yes, let's not live in this delusion.
And in most,
I played
and in most
16
cases,
years
and in
of
most cases,
professional
Grace,
sports.
more people, men and women, want to watch men play sport.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's just a demonstrable fact. That
The primary reason why men's sports is so much more valuable from a optics perspective is because of testosterone that flows hormonally through our bodies. It makes us bigger, faster, stronger, have more reaction time, bigger lung capacity, and the list goes on and on and on. But if you take the OnlyFans example and look at the top performers, which are female, the components of their success that they cannot change is based off of gender, genetics, and guess what? They're hormones, which is the antithesis of testosterone. You see how that works? Men are not complaining about how much OnlyFans models make because men are not designed optically in that place of business to make as much money. But meanwhile, women are complaining about how much men are making in testosterone-driven sports.
may change.
Name
And my point is,
five-
if it changes, I don't see why equality should be the only ambition for the women. If it turns out that in some sport women get more viewers watching and therefore draw more revenue, I'm all for them getting more money than the men.
Can you name 5 WNBA players? 5 female soccer players?
I mean,
Can't
I
name
can't
any
name
of them.
any soccer players
That's
already.
crazy. I
What
wish we
is
had the support
WNBA?
from the
basketball?
feminists.
I don't
we
know.
would get equal pay if we would just get the support from the feminists.
Well, let me
What
tell
do
you- let me
mean?
tell
I
you-
just name 5.
Let me
Name
tell you,
five what? WNBA? I don't even know what the WNBA
We
is.
need
Exactly.
our
Basketball.
support.
you're asking the wrong person.
Yeah,
I
you
think.
really
Yeah.
are.
But
The point that Pearl's trying to make is that if the feminists supported female sports as much as men support male sports, then there wouldn't be a revenue problem. Yeah. Like, yeah, if you guys ever have an issue with speaking about equal pay amongst these feminists, right, you just ask them when's the last time that they've been to a WNBA game? When's the last time that you've been to a female soccer game? And see how they will deflect their way up out the conversation. All right, so final thoughts. That was pretty much the end of the debate. I think that it's very interesting to see that Pearl is being positioned as a leader in all of this, or the female Andrew Tate. But if you think about her track record of getting out of just doing reaction videos or just stuff in her studio, she's always kind of collaborated with a bunch of different people from all walks of life. And for that, you can't knock her networking hustle as long as she stays tried and true to these points. And there's other things within her mind that don't come up, which expels components of her audience that was riding with her for a long damn time. Anyway, if she wants to continue to fight for this, degeneracy in modern society today, no one's going to be able to stop her to be able to do that. So this is what we got. I just find it so interesting that she keeps on getting paired up with these women that seems like professionals at just ignoring the facts presented to them. I mean, to be outclassed by Pearl here when H3 dismantled her a few weeks back says a lot. But yeah, that's all I really want to say about this particular video. This equal pay shit is just, it's so stupid. Like at this point that it's still something that people debate and they fight for, no matter how many times that you say it over and over and over again, they just don't make it through their thick skulls, right? But yeah, the female Andrew Tate, I think she did okay. You know what's so interesting about all this? Imagine if Kevin Samuels was still alive. Would they call Kevin Samuels the black Andrew Tate? Like, I know like Andrew Tate is like half black, but would they call him that? Like, why do they do that to her? Like, it's a positive for her. She should hold on to that moniker. I think it pushes her in the algorithm even further. But like, what? Like, excuse me? Calling Pearl the female Andrew Tate to me is as disrespectful as calling her the white Kevin Samuels. Like, I think they're so far from the universes from each other, but the only thing that they could build them all together or to combine them all together is to being provocateurs. And for that, yeah, maybe, or maybe not. Questions, comments, concerns? Y'all already know what to do. Mediocre tutorials and reviews at gmail.com. What you guys think about my comments regarding this video? What I get wrong? What I get right? What do you disagree with? Or what do you agree with? Let me know down in the comment box down below. Let's make this into a conversation. Your boy been working over here. What up? With renewed vigor and renewed spirit. Went through the worst time of my life over the past 6 to 7 months. But y'all didn't know. Shit, I barely even knew. No, I knew. But I made it through. And here I am. Bigger, better, faster, stronger than ever before. Ain't nothing gonna be able to defeat me. Nothing. Until next time, YouTube. Peace!
You don't wanna see me get vexed. Bars on your phone, tell them man you can't jack. The big girl, the ones who can't stretch. Breaking the neck when we in the car next. You don't wanna see me get vexed. Bars on your phone, tell them man you can't jack. The big girl, the ones who can't stretch. Breaking the neck when we in the car next. Dead bars, need defibrillation ASAP. Get boxed with a straight guy. I'm reminded of mind state they lack. Every time that they incline, we go way back. All they wanna be is just rude.